Good morning. Today I am going to cover a story that was covered in London on April 22nd, 1981. Now, the lady was named the Dowager Countess of Limerick. She scoffed at the superstition when she acquired the Hall place, but later told of seeing the spiritual visitor there. The death of the Dowager Countess of Limerick has made the superstitious shudder, for she has been seeing the notorious ghost of Hall Place, supposed to be the ghost of the Black Prince, and had defied it. Now, the Black Prince was thought to be a man of royalty who had made a deal with the devil, and as a result, he had to curse the people that lived in the Hall place from then on. But anyways, this apparition, according to ancient tradition, has always brought tragedy to those who see it. It so happened that Lady Limerick, following the first appearance to her handsome son, Viscount Wentworth, was killed in action in France in the First World War. One daughter died in infancy, and her other daughter, the beautiful Lady Victoria, was carried off in her youth. She was married to the American financier James Cox Brady, who also died prematurely in 1918. He had presented Hall Place to his mother-in-law, the Countess, whom he greatly admired. Her husband, the 4th Earl of Limerick, died suddenly in 1929. The final last appearance of the ghost happened just a few days ago. She had long been told that she was a skeptic on the subject of ghosts, but since all her immediate family had died after the princess's wraith, she had first appeared, the Countess began to believe that she would be next, and so it happened. The part of the Hall Place that meets the eye is beautiful and picturesque. It's about 250 years old, but its foundations and many of its rooms were there at ancient times, and was originally an ancient medieval castle. It was the old castle that many historic and ghostly traditions were associated. The Black Prince was the oldest son of King Edward III and one of the greatest heroes of the Middle Ages. Shakespeare has told how he was winning the battle of Poitiers over the French when his father came up with a superior army. He refused to join in the battle, saying his son must keep all the glory. He was called the Black Prince because he wore black armor. In fact, he was blonde. The Black Prince's life was in various ways bound up with Hall Place. It was there that he first saw the Lady Joan, known as the Fair Maid of Kent, a member of the royal family, and he had fallen in love with her on the spot, proposing marriage on the same day. His wooing was quickly followed by marriage, and he spent a happy honeymoon at Hall Place, and then sailed away for glory and conquest of France. Why the Black Prince should bring death and disaster to the owner of Hall Place, where he had known such happiness, is more or less a mystery. The Countess of Limerick made public the ghost's first visit to her years ago. On acquiring the castle, she declared that she had no belief in ghosts and defied the Black Prince to disturb her. She sat up several nights watching and nothing happened. She said that this proved what she had always believed, that the ghost was all imagination. Then one night, everything happened. She had given up all hope of seeing the apparition and was chatting in the great hall with her great lady, Miles Malison. The servants retired to their quarters. Some 20 minutes before midnight, Lady Miles screamed and pointed to the winding staircase. dimly outlined and doubly terrifying because it seemed surrounded by a sort of semi-transparent haze, was the apparition of a tall knight in an ancient armor with a visor closed and lance at rest. As Lady Miles sank trembling to her knees, the Countess, assuming that the intruder was a human tricker, went into action. Hanging close at hand was an ancient mace, a spiked war club. She seized it and started toward the staircase. There it was, said Lady Limerick. Then something happened. I was seized with a sort of paralysis, wholly different from fear. I simply couldn't move. I stood as if hypnotized while the apparition, or whatever it was, lifted the arm in a gesture which seemed to signify a general warning, and then disappeared. Again the servants were aroused, the doors locked, and the house ransacked. Nothing was found, and it seemed inconceivable that a man masquerading in a heavy armor could have escaped or hidden himself. It was the series of investigations that followed which brought to light the extraordinary record of the previous apparition of the alleged ghost of the Black Prince in Kent. One of the early appearances is said to have occurred in 1655 when Kentish peasants behold the ghost in armor on the parapet of the castle. So this went on for many years. There were legends of previous appearances, and the peasants were convinced that they presaged some evil happening. They rang bells and prayed in the churches and were not surprised in a few months later when the entire country was ravaged by the Great Plague. The apparition is said to have appeared again during the Napoleon Wars, when the coast of England was in danger of invasion, and this time possibly with really useful effect, for the specter helped rouse the country into the peril. The Society for Psychic Research has been investigating strange phenomenon for 20 years and has not yet come to a definite conclusion. There are many who believe that the ghost is animated by a malignant purpose, the prince famed for his heroism and generous nature should have an evil ghost seemed surprising. But the explanation has been offered. It appears that in the later years, the Black Prince became allied with the infamous King Pedro the Cruel of Portugal. Under his evil influence, the prince lost his chivalrous and humane character and became imbued with the cruelty of the king. He captured castle after castle and butchered the inhabitants. At last he came to a strong fortress that seemed impregnable. It was inhumane and heavily garrisoned. In the vaults were vast quantities of gold and precious metals. So he was looking to get some money. In this stage of his life, the prince had no more form of generosity, and after a day of ferocious, unsuccessful fighting for the castle, he sat in his tent and cursed most eloquently. "I'd give my soul and everything I ever had dear to me, so I could possess the castle and all the gold in its vaults." He is said to have said. "I accept your offer, Prince," said a stranger that had come in almost immediately after he had spoken this. "I require you to put a curse on the old castle in Kent, who who possess it will come to an untimely death and sorrow." The Black Prince repeated the oath dictated to him by Satan, who revealed to him a secret underground passageway which him and his men entered the castle. He slaughtered the defendants and carried away all the gold. Now, by this time, I don't know how much is true and how much is legend, But anyways, that is the legend, and many of this do believe explains many of the tragedies that have happened. There are still others who assert that the ghost is not that of the Black Prince, but of his son, the unhappy King Richard II, who was dethroned by his cousin, who became King Henry IV. Shakespeare attributed to Richard a famous soliloquy in which he called himself the most wretched man alive. Richard had lived at Hall Place and enjoyed the luxuries. After Richard's downfall, King Henry ordered his ruthless follower, Mr. Piers Exton, to take him into custody and let him no further trouble the royal peace. The legend says that Richard escaped for a time to Hall Place, but the warden betrayed him to Exton, who carried him to the strong and remote castle of Pomfret and ended his life. This say the believers of the legend, which explain why the wretched king's ghost haunts one of the last scenes of his unhappy life and brings misfortune to those who live there. The late Limerick was forced to believe that it was the Black Prince and that it bodied her to the end. 4 times it appeared, and on the 4th time she fell, and there was no hope. She was a thoroughgoing Irish woman. Her husband, the late Earl of Limerick, belonged to an old Anglo-Irish family, but she was straight Irish blood. Her father was Joseph Burke Irwin of County Limerick, and his father was John Burke Irwin of Roscommon, known as Hard Riding Johnny on account of his horsemanship. As president of the London County residence of the British Red Cross, she came to America in 1941 to visit the American Red Cross chapters and express the thanks to the Americans for our help in the war. After she came into possession of Hall Place, they told her it was haunted. She said, "I'm not afraid of ghosts. I don't believe in them." After an extraordinary experience that would make any ordinary woman scream, she said, "I repeat that I'm not afraid of ghosts for the reason that I am not afraid of anything. But as for believing in them, well, my skepticism has been more than shaken." Her fearlessness she kept up to the end. So, She was very famous, influential. She lived until 1981. And the Black Prince, who was it was either the Black Prince or his brother that is haunting. Sometimes it's hard to get a name, so it possibly, very possibly, could be that it is the brother. I thought it was unique that he was called the Black Prince, but he was actually a blonde. And that is the story. Has anybody heard anything else about it? I'd love to hear your comments.